Awesome. Okay. Again, Glenn's going to talk about what we're going to be doing next. We do hope you folks actually engage with this and enjoy the breakouts and speak. So I'm going to turn it over to Glenn. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Ken. And thank you everyone for taking your time out. Great to have you here. And I know it's end of day, so hopefully this session is energizing and enjoyable as much as it is informative for you. So that's my hope. I'm going to share my screen and we'll do a few different things. We'll also do a bit of live polling as a way of kind of getting your thoughts on a few things. So you can do that on your phone or on your computer or tablet or whatever it might be, but I'll share that when the time comes. So I'll share my screen. And give me what was that, Ken?
So the listed items. Cool. I need to go and mute them.
Cool. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about, as Ken has probably mentioned before you came into the session, is we're going to talk a bit about anti-fragility, and we'll talk about anti-fragility as it relates to projects and delivery. A quick note about anti-fragile. Some of you may know this, some of you may not. The term anti-fragile, as you can see on your screen, was coined not in a project context. It was coined by an economist, a statistician by the name of Nassim Taleb. So he wrote this book called Antifragile. And he coined the term because there was no term in the English language, or according to him, any other language. And I've checked it with a few different non-English speakers who confirmed it. Haven't confirmed it with all languages. But essentially, there was no word in the English language that described a system that was a system meaning like, not like a computer system per se, but any system in the world, like a human system or a system of a molecular system or a system of processes or a system of in nature. There's no word in the English language that described a system that's the opposite of fragile. And the thing is that you might think of when you think of the opposite of fragile, you might think of robust, but in fact, that's not the opposite of fragile. So in the book, he talks about 3 different systems, and I'll relate this to projects momentarily, but I want to set a little bit of context for you. So he talks about 3 different system types. The first is fragile. And as you'd imagine, if a fragile system is any system that breaks easily, like glass or paper is fragile, things like that. The second system he talks about is robust. And as you might imagine, a robust system is like steel or a rock or what else? A car, things like this, right? Robust systems. So they're kind of like a hardened version of fragile. So they're not the opposite of fragile, but they're sort of like a hardened version of fragile. The third system that he coined, the name of which he coined, is anti-fragile. And I'm not going to give you examples just yet, because I want you to see if you can come up with some real-life examples. But I'll explain what an anti-fragile system is. So an anti-fragile system is any system, and a system can be like a relationship system of people. It could be processes. It could be things in nature. It could be government. It could be society. It could be things in your house. Any system that gains or improves as a result of stress, pressure, or small failures. Any system that gets better as a result of those. So some things might be coming to mind, and I see a couple people raise their hand. We'll get to you momentarily, and we'll get deeper into this, so don't have no fear. One key element of anti-fragile systems is that the constituent parts, excuse me, if I could spell, that'd probably be good, wouldn't it? The constituent parts are fragile. In order for an anti-fragile system to truly be anti-fragile, the pieces that aren't serving it need to be able to die away to make the overall system or thing stronger. I might take one quick question while we're going through this. Prabhat, did you have a quick question?
No, well, I just kind of raised the hand in order to give an example for it. No, there was no question there.
What we might do, Prabhat, is I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. So I love your desire to do it. We're going to send you into breakout rooms. We'd like to have you guys come up with some potential examples in breakouts. So we'll do that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get breakout rooms up. I'm going to send you into triads, so groups of 3. Give me 2 seconds. Well, actually, Ken, were you going to do that? You're on mute, but I can do it if you like.
I can do it. I can do
Cool.
it. Let's see.
Yeah. Well, so what we'll do is we'll send you into groups of 3, and what I'd like you to do in your group of 3 is come up with real life examples of anti-fragile systems. So it could be anything. It could be things in your house. It could be things in your family. It could be things out in the world. It could be things in nature. Ken, just let me know when you're ready.
Yep.
And so come up with some examples and be ready to share back. So we'll choose a few triads to share back their ideas, and we'll put them down here.
Yep. Just 1 second. Cool. Everybody situated.
I'm going to stop sharing, and once you get into your breakout room, you won't see the screen, obviously, because I won't be the one doing breakout room. Kind of think of it.
Okay.
I wonder, are you ready, Ken?
I can if you want to be. Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's do it. So I'm just going to put quickly in the chat gains from stress, pressure, or small failures. Constituent parts, fragile. So you've got context there. So we'll send you into breakouts. Ken will give them, if you can put the breakout room to automatically close in, say, 5 minutes. We'll give you guys 5 minutes, come up with some examples, and then be ready to share back when we bring you back.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to open up the rooms now.
Beautiful. See you shortly.
Thanks.
Don't forget to remute yourself.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. I'm going to reshare my screen. All right. All right. So, are there any triads that would like to share what you came up with? If there are, please raise your hand. Prabhat, what did you guys come up with?
Right. So we were actually three. So a third person, I'm not sure we recall his name, but he couldn't join for the conversation. But me and Nimta, we kind of discussed about two examples. The first one was about democracy, right? Which is, I think, it's a good example for anti-fragile concept. Why? Because there would be certain challenges, there would be stresses within the government, in terms of dealing with ongoing challenges. Maybe people are sometimes pro-democracy, or there would be certain divisions within the government as well, which will be against that as well. But at the end of the day, if we look at any of the, biggest democracies in the world, right, they have kind of overcome those challenges gradually, and they have grown and got matured. So I think that's one of the examples.
Yeah, great example. Just going to comment on that, Pravat. That's a really, really good example. And what's great about it is that in most instances it does work, and obviously it'll have its limits, but for the most part, the nature of democracy is that when it comes under stress and pressure, the nature of the system is such that things that aren't working fall away so that other things can work as a result of all the input and new information and learning that happens under pressure. So a great example. Did you guys have one more? And then we'll let some other people come in.
Yeah, we did have. Nimita, would you like to go for that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the other example I was saying is when you're strength training, if you're trying to increase muscle, you can start off with 15 pounds, then go up to 25 pounds and 35 pounds. You're putting pressure on your body and stress to make sure you gain the muscle. So your body may not be used to that, but you are trying to form into a better version of yourself. So
yeah, that's a great example, Amita. So muscles are definitely an example of an anti-fragile system. I mean, the very fact that when you're working out, you're breaking muscle fibers, so the constituent parts are fragile. And then as a result of that pressure and stress and breaking of small parts, it gets stronger. So that's a perfect example of an anti-fragile system. Very good. Let's go to David.
Yes, our group basically came down to three different words for this: flexibility, adaptability, and what's the third one was? Learning. In other words, Darwin basically said, able to handle change or adapt to your environment is the way you survive. Flexibility is basically the same thing, and learning from your mistakes. In other words, what you did wrong or how can you improve, basically.
Yeah, nice. That's a good one, David. So the theory of evolution as a concept is an example of an anti-fragile system. So you have weaker parts that fall away. As a result, you get stronger parts. That's another great example. So thank you, David. Let's go to Chris. You're on mute. You can sign it to us if you want. Although I don't know sign language, so I wouldn't.
Okay, sorry, I was talking in mute. Yeah, we came with a healthy body, like with a good immune system. You can be exposed to psychological or physical stress. How the body adapts to it with any kind of infection. Other one we came up was with the leadership. A great leadership. how it handles in a situation, how it takes, functions in a, how a leader will lead in a high stressed environment.
Yeah.
The person doesn't break down, but he gains, how we can adapt to a different kind of situation. One of the good examples we came up was also like the US military, how it, how it is always working, trying to be more stronger all the time compared to, any, especially in the arms race, we're always leading.
Yeah, these are really good examples. I'm just going to bring up the chat in case anybody is messaging. Really good examples, Chris. In fact, the immune system is a perfect example of an anti-fragile system. And one of the great examples of the immune system that really illustrates this is not just the fragile parts dying away that aren't working or that are weaker, but the gaining of new information. So one of the hallmarks of an anti-fragile system, which is truly adaptive, is that through the failures and the stresses and the pressure, more fragile things break away and fail, but the system itself gains information and uses that information to get stronger. So really good. And self-reflection and improvement is another example of anti-fragility. So that's really good. Let's do one more. We'll go to Linnea. Is it Linnea? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, good job. Thank you.
Okay.
One of the ones we came up with was airport security. It was pretty good until, well, it was good, but the stress of something like 9/11 made them crack down more and add a lot more security after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're thinking like the like security as a societal concept and responding to stressors, and as a result of that, doing things that work better.
Yes.
Is that kind of yeah. So kind of societal security. Yeah, it's a really good example. So you might have, and it's responding to threats and stresses. So as a result of the initial event, you may have had some failures, some deaths, some injury, but as a result of that, we learn from it. We get better. We get stronger. It's also possible. This is actually a really good time to point this out, Linnea. Really, really good. It's also possible that the system, instead of becoming robust, degrades into robust. Instead of becoming anti-fragile, it degrades into robust. So it crystallizes. And this is one of the dangers you may have pointed out of bureaucracy is bureaucracy can crystallize. And if it crystallizes, it becomes robust. The good thing about robust is it's hard to break. The bad thing about robust is it doesn't respond to change well, and it's not malleable. So it can't learn as quickly. In fact, in some cases, can't learn at all.
Glenn, we lost your audio. Are you there?
I think he got frozen.
Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Apologies for that. Yeah, so there's a risk of that's a great example because it's like this devolution into robust where it becomes crystallized and doesn't learn anymore. And in fact, it degrades from there. Because a robust system, any robust system over time, because of the second law of thermodynamics, because of entropy, it becomes outdated, it wears away. So yeah, really good example. Okay, fabulous examples, really, really good. I've got to say, I've done this with a lot of groups, and these are really, really good examples. So we've got some thinkers in the room. So good ones. Okay, thank you very much. Actually, Ira has come in and said, Dan, example was a snowball. Ira, did you want to explain that? You're on mute. Still on mute. Yeah.
To another room.
Yeah,
What was
I don't
that,
know
man?
what happened. I got stuck on mute. I love the example. I love the example because the constituent elements are so fragile, but when you pack it together, you get this hard snowball. Very anti-fragile. but I also like the fact that it had a finite life, that it didn't, you know, when you start thinking about Antifragile, it got us to thinking about the importance of thinking about it over a timeline.
Yeah, interesting example. Yeah, it probably depends on the nature of the snowball. So I would say, generally speaking, a snowball might be more of a robust system, but it depends on the nature of the snowball. If the snowball is improving over time as a result of stress and pressure, depending on how you define improving. So that's an interesting one. That's getting a bit theoretical. I like the philosophy behind it. Okay, beautiful. Thank you very much, Ira. Let's go from here into, I'd like to get your sense in your, so we're gonna do a bit of a live poll actually. So grab out your phones, or maybe you can do it on your laptop or your computer if you want, or your tablet. And the way to do this, I'm just gonna present this. You should see on my screen the live poll. If you go to pollev.com/Glenn B, GLENNB, then you'll see it come up. It can be again on a phone, it can be on a tablet, your PC, doesn't matter. And once you get on there, feel free to type in your answer to this question. So what are the primary challenges that we face in projects and delivery? And it could be the ones you're facing day to day. It could be the ones you see your clients facing, or your friends. And once you put them in, you can upvote, you can downvote, you can add your own. Just really want to get a sense of, what are you guys experiencing out there? Resourcing, scope creep, absolutely. Mismatched expectations, man, do we ever have those? Dependencies and lack of alignment, clear priorities across teams, yeah, no doubt about that. Lack of a sturdy rudder, interesting, to create direction, right? Lack of resources. People do not talk to each other at the right time, so dependencies aren't ready. Yeah, communication's a huge one. It's a really good one. So we've got dependencies voted up. Foreseeing risks, absolutely. It's amazing how often in our delivery we look at risks once and then we kind of just move on with life. Asha said she can't add it to the board, but unclear requirements. Yeah, unclear requirements, absolutely. Siloed behaviors, 100%. Cheapers. One of the biggest problems, isn't it? Silos. Stakeholder commitment, yes. As you guys say these, I kind of cringe because I know I can feel it. I can feel it. Lack of architectural clarity, yeah, for sure. Lack of user focus, functionalities there but not usable. Yes. We've got dependencies and lack of alignment, clear priorities voted up at the moment. That seems like it's a big one that's on your mind. Knowing less than we think we do, absolutely. Not much focus on cost and resourcing after the planning phase. Yeah, boy, is that ever a problem. Lack of enablement, yes. Yeah, I like that one, the lack of knowing less than we think we do. That's a really, really good one. And it really highlights, it'll highlight as I go through this, the benefit of anti-fragility in a system, because in delivery system, because the truth is we just don't know what we don't know. All right, skills, solid behaviors, dependencies really is up there, is quite popular. Siloed behaviors, mismatched expectations, resourcing, scope creep. Yeah, so these are the challenges we face day in and day out. And as a response to these challenges, essentially what I've found is that there are 3 system responses as a delivery system. There are 3 delivery system responses to this. Whether you're doing Scrum, whether you're doing Kanban, whether you're doing extreme program, whether you're doing traditional project management, whatever you're doing, there are 3 different system approaches to this: fragile, robust, and anti-fragile or adaptive. Because it is totally possible to approach delivery, agile delivery, with a brittle kind of rigid, robust sort of mindset. It's almost like an old school mindset trying to apply agile principles. So it's possible to do that. Where we'll get the most benefit is bringing these issues and these challenges into an anti-fragile system. So that's what we'll talk about. So good. Thank you very much for adding these. Okay, I'll pop back to my screen. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take these challenges you shared, and I'm going to share with you a bit of an orienting model that these kind of fall into in terms of delivery approaches that people take, that organizations take. So you could think of, so if you imagine the 3 system types here on the left, fragile, robust, and anti-fragile, those generally align, as I see it, to 5 levels of system, of delivery system maturity, if you will. The first level of delivery system maturity is totally fragile. And it's kind of like glass, it breaks easily, and features of a fragile delivery system are, there's some process, but we're mostly winging it. So we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants. And many of us have either been in that or seen it. The next level of system maturity up is brittle. So brittle is kind of like bones, breaks with a bit of effort. Features of a brittle delivery system. There's a bit more process built in, but often you're on the back foot. So if you feel like you're in a project or in some sort of delivery where you feel like, man, we're on the back foot all the time, like we're just on the back foot, it's highly likely you're in a brittle delivery level of maturity. The next layer up is robust, similar to a robust system that we were talking about. And a robust delivery systems like iron, it resists well, it bends under pressure, only under pressure and heat. So you can kind of mold it a little bit under lots of heat, lots of pressure. So far we've got fragile, breaks easily, brittle, breaks with effort, robust, resists well. Okay, so kind of traditional process maturity sits here. We've got the process down pat, and we are good at it. Man, we are good, and it is good, and it is robust, and it's hard to break, right? And a point to make is there's nothing wrong with that, right? That serves certain situations. So features of robust systems, solid traditional process maturity. Often, though, it sacrifices innovation and creativity in favor of perceived stability. So it kind of sees stability and creativity on 2 ends of the spectrum, and you can have one or the other. So that's robust. But then we cross a sort of a line here where it shifts. And we come up towards an anti-fragile system as we move past robust. And we don't necessarily do away with robust, but it's a different type of system. So we have flexible layer of delivery maturity. Flexible is like rubber, it recovers well. So breaks easily, breaks with effort, resists well, recovers well. Features of a flexible delivery system: solid process, healthy culture. Process makes room for feedback loops and adaptive planning. So these are kind of basics of agility, as you probably would all know. And it begins to encourage creativity as part of its constitution. Okay, so it's beginning to move to sort of transcend robust and move into an anti-fragile system. The highest degree of anti-fragile delivery I see is essentially an adaptive delivery system. And it's like muscles or the economy, as you guys mentioned. The economy is another example. When it has shocks as a result of that, as long as the whole thing doesn't fail, it'll get stronger. We'll learn from it. We'll become better. We'll work remotely. We'll, things like that. It gains from volatility and stress, and it innovates well. So you've got breaks easily, breaks with effort, resists well, recovers well, innovates well. So we've got to shift up to this anti-fragile level of maturity. Features of an anti-fragile system are that the key, and this is quite a different way of thinking about it. And we'll talk a bit more about the how behind this, and I'll share some toolkits with you that you can go away and use. In an anti-fragile system, key conditions are set to enable innovation and creativity. So you have solid process maturity in terms of empiricism built into the process, transparency, inspection, and adaptation, the basics around agile process, innovation and creativity flourish, but the conditions are key here. This is the difference. So I'll give you an example. It's kind of like in our democracy. So I'm here in New Zealand, you guys are in the US. We have free societies, and in free societies, we have certain conditions in place that enable freedom. So every single dot and T isn't crossed and I isn't dotted. No, we don't have a rule for every single thing. This is what you do when you get up. This is how you walk across the room. This is what you say to your neighbor when you walk outside. No, we don't have that. And that's a hyperbole, but we don't have that. What we have instead is we have things like rules of the road. So, speed limits, stay within your lane, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Put your indicator on when you're gonna go do something, We have conditions in place so that within those conditions, we have freedom to thrive, to grow, to change, to learn. So the difference between a fragile and robust system and an anti-fragile system is the conditions are set in a certain way, and we'll talk about what those ways are. So to finish up this ladder, and then I want to get your thoughts on a couple of things in terms of your experience. We've got on the right over here, we've got the likelihood of say delivery success. Likelihood of delivery success, the likelihood of customer and stakeholder satisfaction, the likelihood of a positive profile for the delivery leads, the likelihood of various levels of stress change as we go up in the system types. And just to clarify again, you can deliver an agile project or agile delivery with a robust system. It doesn't work well, and often that's how it's done, unfortunately, but it can be done, and it's done there often. Sorry, I've lost connection to my iPad. Just give me one quick moment. Apologies for this. Never actually had this happen mid presenting. I'll learn from it and get better next time. We'll make it anti-fragile. All right, there we go. We're back in 3, 2, 1. Apologies for this. All right. There we go. Perfect. All right, we are back. So the likelihood of these change as you go up the ladder. The likelihood of delivery success and customer stakeholder satisfaction and overall profile of delivery leads improves, as you'd imagine, dramatically. Stress levels drop because the whole system, the conditions are set in place where the whole system is looking to improve rather than just a couple of key people trying to make the whole thing improve, right? So what I'd like to get from you, I'm just going to go back to the live polling, is a sense of where some of the recent projects you've been involved with kind of fall on that scale. So if you pop over to prolev.com/Glenn B, you can refresh that page. It should be on there. Feel free to enter your answer. I'm just going to go back to here so you can see it. Kind of the most recent projects you've been engaged with, or maybe most of the projects you're engaged with, and kind of what you see out there. Oh, whoops, sorry. It's no longer activated. Apologies. Should be activated now. Sorry, turned it off momentarily there. Go ahead and enter your answer. Cool. So we've got a bit of a curve beginning to develop. And I suspect, based on the nature of this group, this feels about right. Okay. So we've got a bit of a bell curve going. Generally, what I see out in the market, so I work with markets in Australia, in New Zealand, in the US, across Europe. I have some clients in Vienna. What I see across the world in terms of delivery systems is a bell curve similar to this, but a little bit lower down. So you guys are quite clued in. So I suspect you probably be part of things that are where the bell curve center of gravity is a bit higher. I generally see the center of gravity around between brittle and robust. But based on your level of experience and interest, this feels right. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so there's quite a range. Now, the question then that we have is, how on earth do we push maturity up, right? How do we do that? So I'm going to share with you an orienting model that'll help bring together big pieces to do that. But what I'd like to do first is I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. I'll try doing them this time, Ken, just for fun. And I'll put you into groups of 3. You may potentially be about 3. You might have one with 4. I'll give you 5 minutes. And what I'd like you to do is, as a group, come up with what elements do you see are critical or important to bring us into an anti-fragile or adaptive delivery system. So just do a bit of a brainstorm, be ready to share back. Keen to hear some voices that we haven't heard before as well, in addition to the ones we have. So be ready to share back what you've got. Before we go into these breakouts, anyone have any questions in terms of what we're doing? Or
I do. Actually, what system are you using to type in your information and on your iPad there?
Oh, yeah. Good question. I'm using, it's an iPad. I'm using Notability, and I'm using a tool called Mirror Mac PC.
Mm-hmm.
That's a subscription-based thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Cool.
What was the question again that we're discussing?
Yes, good question. Good question about the question. So what I'm going to have you do, who was that? That was
me.
I'm looking for
Matthew.
Oh, Matthew, cool. Yeah, Matthew, good question. So what we're going to do is I'm going to send you into breakouts.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the breakout room, I'd like you to brainstorm what elements can create an adaptive delivery system, or an anti-fragile delivery system. So you might have some ideas, just brainstorm them, and then when you come back, you'll share back. Maybe we'll have a few people share back what they came up with.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, I'll send you out into the breakout rooms, and we'll give you 5 minutes, and I'll see you back shortly. Thanks, guys. All right. Good. Awesome. I'll just see if I can actually, I wonder if I can share my screen to to them in the breakouts and see if it works. I think it should work actually. Screen 2, share to breakout rooms. Yeah, you can. There we go. I'll be sharing to them.
Nice.
All right. So how are you feeling so far?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I think it's going well.
Cool. Great.
Yep. What's your impression? How do you think it's going?
Yeah, seems so far seems so good. Seems good. Seems like they're engaged. A pretty switched on group of people you got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We try, you know, it's all about community with us. We try to make sure that, you know, I'm trying to build community and leadership within the community, you know, kind of, you know, to some degree, trying to do some deliberately developmental
Beautiful.
community work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's the
Try to
hard work.
inspire
That's the
them
hard
to
work.
step in. Yeah, try
Yeah.
to inspire them to step in as much as possible. So,
Yeah, I love it.
Mhm.
Very cool. So in terms of time, so we're coming up on what, like about 45 minutes remaining for the evening?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Give you
So
like 3 or
we'll-
4 minutes at the end to do a wrap up and that kind of stuff, so you can keep going, you know.
Sweet. Okay, cool. So what we got next is we'll talk through, we'll get their thoughts on key elements,
Mhm.
and then I'll share an orienting model and a kind of a set of a mental model that'll bring a lot of the important elements together that they probably have mentioned anyways, but it'll put it together in a big picture for them.
Mhm.
And then I'll share. There's one toolkit within that model. There's a whole bunch of toolkits in it, but there's one in particular that I'll share with them and I'll offer for free. And I'll take them through that a little bit. And that might be, I suspect we might not have enough time for the exercise, but
Okay.
that's okay. Yeah, well, we'll see how we go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Again, I really appreciate you doing this, Glenn. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked with Michael at all recently or not?
No, I haven't actually. I wasn't at the last meeting either. Were you?
Yeah, I went. Yep.
Okay. What was covered?
We were just kind of talking about, you know, what we want to do in the future and just checking in, right? So, you know, we're talking about potentially kind of offering up to sort of have our own sort of developmental groups then tied in with Michael. So kind of like take the ball forward a little bit ourselves.
Right.
With him and other folks maybe showing up occasionally.
Yeah, got it. Okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. No, I haven't spoken with him lately. I've just been, yeah, I've kind of stopped doing a lot of the stuff that, because I was helping out with some of their newer cohorts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was helping out with a couple of the ones post ours. But I stopped doing that because I've just got so much on, and plus their time zone at the moment is kind of like in the middle of the night for me.
Yeah.
So
You're like
yeah,
in
even the session. What's that?
like Europe, is he in like Europe or something? Is that what it is?
Yeah, he's in Europe. He's in Sweden now, so that's Central European time. And then even the Mountain Time ones that are late in the day, or not late in the day, early in the morning or something like that.
Mhm.
I forget what it was, but the timing doesn't work. So I've stopped doing that. So I haven't actually spoken with him for a while.
Yeah, I haven't talked with him since the mastery ended, so I want to reach out to him sometime soon. I think I might just schedule half an hour on his calendar. See if he's up
Good
there.
idea. One quick sec.
Sure. Looks like people are coming back, Glenn.
Awesome.
Yeah, I came back early.
All good, Frank. All good.
Frank. Should we close the breakout rooms?
Yeah.
Glenn?
Yeah.
They
You
were
got it?
close to timing out.
Oh, cool. Sweet.
Being recorded.
systems are either adaptive or they're not.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully you could see my screen in your breakout. It was kind of a new feature and I tried it out. So could you guys see it? Perfect, cool, beautiful. It's a new Zoom feature, so you can share your screen in breakouts. It's kind of what you've always wanted to do if you've ever facilitated Zoom rooms. Christina's nodding her head in vigorous agreement. Cool, all right. What did you guys come up with? Who'd like to share? Maybe raise your hand. In particular, if you haven't shared yet, it'd be great to hear from you. Frank, yeah, go for it.
Our group, we said we came up with 2 items. Servant leadership.
Beautiful.
Need to have strong leadership, but more from a serving to the group, not just to themselves. Another area was open communication.
Open communication, yeah.
I did have a third one, but I'll wait for others to share.
Cool, cool. Thanks for being generous. Oops. The key elements to create anti-fragile delivery. Excuse my chicken scratch writing. I'm sure everybody else's is way better than mine. Doug, what have you got?
Yeah, so in our group, Matthew had brought up corporate humility to know what you need to fix as a company. And I felt like that just kind of tied into what our group does, what most sprint groups do, or agile groups, is the retrospective to see what you did well, what you need to improve on, and try to make incremental changes with each sprint to try to improve and with each one and get harder.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting that the corporate humility that you guys came up with is actually, it's a key element of what I see is critical, because one of the key pieces of creating an anti-fragile delivery system is not necessarily just the process, but also the environment. And that is a very critical part of the environment. I call it something different, but we'll talk about it momentarily. So that was really good. So thanks for bringing that in. Marla.
So I was in a room with Ira, and there were some things that are on there. So there were about 4 things. So one was this trust and having a safe space for people to be able to be open and honest about what's working, what's not. Ira brought up the freedom to make mistakes. He's like, you could have that safe space, but you may feel like you don't want to make a mistake. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And that this may tie to servant leadership, with the idea of senior management having the mindset of being adaptable, because that sets the tone for the organization. And then we also mentioned retrospectives as well. So you're carving out a space to have those conversations about what's working, what's not, what could improve.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, really, really good examples. Freedom to make mistakes, trust, safety, mindset, all critical elements and conditions. Really, really good. Sorry, who was that? Ira, go for it.
Yeah, can I just say one more that come up that really, for in our group, was courage.
Courage, yeah, nice. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We'll talk a little bit about that, and it's an interesting one, courage, because courage almost can arise as a result of some other key conditions like safety, for example. So it's a really, really good point, Ira. Pravat.
Yeah, Glenn, I don't know if you need to scroll down if you're writing stuff down that we want to see, but we're just seeing the top part. So just an FYI.
Are you just seeing the top part? Okay. I'll just stop sharing my screen, and then I'll try resharing. And you guys can hear me and see me, okay? Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Sorry, the travel time from New Zealand to New Jersey is probably a bit slow. It's making its way across the Pacific. Or maybe it's going through Asia. It's finding quarantine or something. Okay. Bad jokes, dead jokes. Can you guys see the screen now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Beautiful. Pravat?
Yeah. So I I had Xavier and Matt Maroon, but you know, we kind of discussed about a couple of things. So I have, well, you know, Xavier talked about communication, but I actually wanted to kind of connect to communication, other aspects associated with it, which I've already mentioned, in a holistic way, which would be called as cross collaboration. You know, which would cover not even just communication, it would be knowledge sharing. You know, it would be about talking, you know, it would be about different other aspects that you could actually do to make the team work efficiently in terms of deliverables. So that was one. And the other aspect we talked about was for, I think, well, it was change management, and not in just in terms of people. It could be technology based as well. And the associated link would be historical artifacts, you know, that we could look back into, or maybe lessons learned that would help us to grow to that level. So
Yeah,
this,
nice. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful ones. Thanks for that. The valuing history to grow it's a really good perspective. So that's absolutely a key condition. Mara, we'll take Mara. We'll take you as the last one, and then we'll build on what you guys have here.
Thanks for giving me that honor. I was in the same room as Ram and Elizabeth, and
Cool.
the discussion went at the beginning, thanks to my colleagues, towards the human part of the system, and that led me to propose two properties of systems of people, but also psychological character traits of people, which are the ambiguity tolerance. That's one of the psychological properties that systems can also display, just like humans.
Say it again,
There's
sorry.
a lot of ambiguity tolerance.
Oh, yeah.
The ability for the way you function, you behave, and the way your beliefs and principles are stacked to work in an environment that is full of contradictions. That allows you to profit from a lot of benefits, such as resilience, focus, clarity, a lot of things that derive from that. So ambiguity tolerance was the first one. The other one that was proposed was so clarity, not transparency, but clarity with regard to goals. So this usually has benefits when you have systems where each individual has their own goals. Of course, by definition, we're human beings, but the clarity on goals allows to have a common topic of discussion, and it's usually a made assumption that we have clarity on goals because we have a ton of documentation, but it's not something that happens once. It is something that has to be updated mostly on a daily basis and realigned to make sure that these gaps that will always exist are narrow. We're not going to be clones of each other, but it's best if we're as close to each other as we can and still have space to go away from the group and be creative.
Yeah, really, really good. I'm just going to write down continual alignment and meaning making. It's really, really good, really beautiful point around the human system element and the meaning making. And it really highlights an important part of that, which is, and we'll talk about this momentarily, but is the importance of continual social meaning making and together constructing what's actually happening around us and how are we responding to it. So yeah, really, really good, Maru, and your triad. Okay, beautiful. This is a really good a picture of key elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few of these things and I'll bring this together into a sort of orienting model that puts it together at a top level. I'll share some of the key elements. And then what I'll also do is I'll share, just based on the amount of time we have, I'll share one of the toolkits behind that. I'll give you a quick overview of it. The toolkit itself, I'm going to share with you for free. I've built it up over the last 12, 13 years. It's drawn from 3 main bodies of research. And what I've essentially done is I have taken that research and applied it in practice changed it, added to it, adjusted it, reapplied it. So I'll share one of those toolkits with you. And also, by the way, at the end of this, I've got a little, I can send out digital copies of all this to you, so you don't get my chicken scratch, unless you like chicken scratch. But I've got a little survey where you can tick, yeah, send me the digital copies, please. So have no fear, we'll get the digital copies out to you if you'd like them. Okay, so if we take, I'm moving my screen down. Can you see it? Can you give me a thumbs up if you see it moving down? Cool, good, thanks. There are essentially three key elements that I see at a top level that are critical for creating an anti-fragile system. And it doesn't matter what type of delivery you're doing, whether you're doing, when you're using an agile process or a waterfall process or a Kanban or whatever you're doing, it doesn't actually matter. It does in terms of whatever suits your delivery, but you can create an anti-fragile environment no matter what. So the three key elements I see are, and some things might be more obvious, some less, some you may have heard of, some you may have not, and I'll explain them. So the first element is adaptive culture. And I'll explain a little bit what's behind these after I draw this out. The second piece is adaptive process. Adaptive culture I have at the top because I believe that that is the most critical piece. Adaptive process is lower right because you can kind of start there. In fact, most people start there. When people think of adaptive kind of delivery or things like that, they think of process. That's probably the default. You can start there. The third piece, which is probably least spoken about, least used, least understood, but super powerful and gives you a leg up on most other organizations or systems or people that you might see doing things, is adaptive human systems. And I'll explain what's behind that as well. So what happens is when we get adaptive culture, adaptive process, and adaptive human systems, as together those rise in maturity, three things show up as a result of that you couldn't have in the absence of those. So an example was, I forget who brought it up. I think it may be ambiguity tolerance, I think it was, and that was Maru, I think. And as ambiguity tolerance is the result of certain conditions. So what I see, and I'll get to you momentarily, Noel, what I see arising from these three things is three other critical elements. When you have adaptive culture and adaptive process, you get a group of people and a human relationship system that is deeply empowered. You can't have empowered people by telling them to be empowered or that they're empowered. Certain conditions need to be in place. It's kind of like you can't have a good motorway without having key conditions in place like rules of the road and things like that. Otherwise, people, it's just that they need to have certain conditions in place to be able to have the freedom and go do what they want within that. So deeply empowered. At the intersection of adaptive culture and adaptive human systems, we get a system, we get a delivery system that is thoroughly healthy. It continues to grow in health as a result of pressure. Third, as a result of adaptive process and adaptive human systems, we get highly efficient. So those three things arise as a result of the other three things, growing and maturity. So I'm going to quickly share the key elements behind each of those, and then we'll pause there and have a bit of discussion, and I'll get to your question now. So behind adaptive culture, we have three key elements. And of all these things, these are all toolkits I've created. One of them in particular, again, I'll share with you and I'll give to you for free. And it's practical. You can go use it right away. It's research-based, practice tested. I think you'll really love it, trying it out and using it. Behind the adaptive culture piece is something somebody mentioned previously, which is psychological safety. Now, the thing about psychological safety is that the problem I find all around the world, it's not unique to any one organization. Everybody has it, is if they want psychological safety, the question that they ask without saying it, or they may say it if they know the problem, is how do we measure it? What do we do with that? And then how do we create it? How do we actually create psychological safety? Often the effort I see to create safety is let's talk about it. And okay, that's a good starting point, but then what do I actually do? So I've created a toolkit behind it in terms of how to measure it, how to work with it, how to create it. I'll share that with you, potentially share an overview in this session, and then I can send you out a digital copy if you want that. But it'll give you the steps, it'll show you what to do. So psychological safety is one, measurement, intervention, how to create it. The second piece in adaptive culture, to create adaptive culture, is conversational and relational skill sets. Essentially in the arena of communications that a few people mentioned, kind of communications, collaboration. The thing about communication and collaboration, the challenge I often see is well, how do we get that going? And there are key skill sets that if we teach them to our teams, by default, it begins to happen. And this is the conditions piece I was talking about. So psychological safety, conversational, relational skill sets. The third piece in adaptive culture is mindset and values, which somebody mentioned. So that's adaptive culture. If I pop down to adaptive process, there will be a lot of things you guys are probably familiar with. So the first piece in adaptive process is delivery modes and methods. So you might have modes. For example, you're choosing a mode which might be more project focused, or a mode that might be more product focused. Methods in terms of methodologies, which you would all be familiar with to some degree, Scrum, Kanban, whatever it might be. Delivery modes and methods. The second piece under adaptive process is measuring what matters. Some of you may have heard of a term called
KPIs?
Not KPIs, but
You mean vanity metrics?
yes, thank you very much. Who was that? Was that you, Noel?
No, that was not me.
Who was that?
That was me.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Barry. Yeah, you've heard of vanity metrics, so it's the opposite of vanity metrics, right? So measuring what matters. Empiricism. So transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Clear pay to learn and pay to build cycles. And product value models. So an example of a product value model might be like the lean canvas, the business model canvas. Whenever I coach teams and organizations, I always bring in a value model. They need to have a value model. They need to have one, and somebody mentioned it early on, it's around clarity and goals. We need to have something very clear that's always updated and continually live and living, where we know what success means, how we measure that. So having product value models. So that's adaptive process. Some of the things you'll be more familiar with, some of the things you might be less familiar with. A lot of the stuff you can Google if you're not familiar with it. And again, I'll share a lot of the stuff with you. I've got digital copies. So now the third piece, this is probably more advanced. Some of you may be familiar with it. It gives you a leg up. A lot of people aren't familiar with it, and even if they are, it's one of the challenges with is how to work with it. What do I do with it? So adaptive human systems is the third piece. Key elements of adaptive human systems are one, and then we'll, after we do this, we'll open it up for discussion and Q&A. And then maybe I'll share one of the toolkits with you as well. I know. Actually, Ken, do we have about 20 minutes left? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got about 20 minutes left, Glenn.
Cool. Sweet. Okay.
Yep.
So
Can we send some of
first,
the links and stuff out via email afterwards as well to folks that RSVP'd? Is that okay?
say one more time.
There are some people that have dropped off. Do you mind if we send out your survey and other things at the end with email?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem. Yeah, no worries. So the first piece of adaptive human systems is relationship systems intelligence, also known as RSI. Sounds like tennis elbow or something, but it's not. RSI is a body of practice. In fact, some of you may have potentially read the book. If you're interested, this is the book, Creating Intelligent Teams. It is by Anna Rod and Marita Frigon. It's the basics of relationship systems intelligence, and it's a real practical book. But it's on how to create intelligent teams and how to harness that intelligence so that everybody together collectively is bettering things and being creative without you going and telling people, be creative, do this, do that. It's a different way of working. So great book, highly recommended. But so that's the first piece, relationship systems intelligence. Second piece is liberating structures. So liberating structures are microstructures that you can use anytime in any meeting to really bring life into it and to bring everybody's brains fully engaged into the project, into the delivery. Working with stakeholders, it's really powerful. So liberating structures, there's a book on it. You can also, if you're not familiar with it, you can Google liberating structures as a website. There's about, I think it's about 20 some odd of liberating structures. They're not complicated. You can try a couple, but they're really powerful conditions that you can set in place into your work with your teams that will change the nature of the system and make it more adaptive and more anti-fragile. One I recommend trying, if you're trying it for the first time, is 124 all. So you can find that on the website if you Google it. Cool. Okay. So so relationship systems intelligence, liberating structures, and the third piece. The third piece is the team entity. And the team entity is all about creating awareness within the team of the intelligence and life of the team that the team takes on. So it's there's a term called, you can probably Google this, the third entity. You'll be able to find that. And I'll give you an example of it. So let's just say I've got, let's just say me and Christina are hanging out. We're talking, we're chilling out, we're having a drink. And there's me, there's Christina, and then there's something called the third entity, which is the relationship that is Christina and Glenn. And that relationship has a substance to it. It has a feel to it. It has a character to it. It can't be modified directly, but Christina and I, we can both modify it by our behaviors and what we do, and we can be aware of how it changes. So that's the team entity. That's a third entity. And there are techniques and practices in creating intelligent teams and mentions a few of them. There are also a few other books you can read to try a few things around that. But creating awareness of this shifts the awareness of the team to just individual to how can I better the entire thing. So it begins to make everybody aware of what quote unquote leaders are normally aware of. And one of the biggest part of servant leadership is helping the entire team to become aware of others and of what's happening in the wider piece where applicable and broaden their mindset. So the third entity, you know it's real when you, for example, walk into a room of 5 people arguing with each other and fighting with each other. You walk in, they're totally silent, and you can cut the tension with a knife. That's the third entity. That's the relationship system substance. So again, a bit more advanced, very powerful to implement. Okay, I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to pause here. What questions are coming up for you? Anything you're kind of curious about? We'll do a couple questions, and then I'm going to share with you the toolkit for psychological safety. We probably won't go through the whole thing in detail, but I'll share it with you, and then I can get you digital copies as well that you can go try out. But if you raise your hand, if you have any questions kind of coming up for you, anything that's standing out for you, anything you're curious about. I know there's a lot here.
If I may, Glenn, to get this started,
Mark,
I wanted to share something that I started thinking about after the last breakout with Ram and Elizabeth. When I was talking about clarity, I didn't explain it well enough because I don't want to take your time. I mean, we're here to listen to you, not to me. But clarity doesn't mean agreement. It's not a contract where you have to all think the same. In fact, it's counterproductive usually to think the same. Just imagine you drop your team in a foreign environment and you expect them to come up with a new solution. If you all think the same, you basically reduce the whole team to one person. So that's what I want to say with clarity. It's just understanding really what the situation is about and being clear on the goals. That's what you mentioned, but also understanding what the others are telling you. And that's the toughest part that we, as humans, and that's normal, I would say, that's normal behavior, tend to be weak at really understanding what the implications of what the other person is doing. As coaches, for example, that's what we spend most of the time doing, is really trying to understand what the other person is doing. But in a daily hectic of work, it's totally understandable that we don't get to do that. I mean, it would be totally exhausting. That's what I wanted to share. So clarity doesn't mean agreement.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, very good clarification, Mauro. And you know, in the context of a psychologically safe environment, as a few have mentioned, you know, you'll get you'll get these sorts of things rising up where people can begin to interact in that way. One of the key elements to the conversational and relational skill sets is something called the listening levels. So I'll just put that down here. And it's a really powerful skill set you can teach a team, and you can do exercises with them on it. In fact, I think in creating intelligent teams, they also mention listening levels. Really powerful exercises to do with the team, and it really is a way to help them become aware of what you're talking about. Okay, I know it's been a long day and you guys are probably quite tired. I'm going to share the toolkit with you, just an overview of it here. And then for those who want it, I've got a little survey where you can fill out your email, and I'll get the team to send across to you the digital copies of everything, including the toolkit. I'll just stop sharing this. And I'll bring up the toolkit. Bear with me for a minute. Okay. Now I'll share my screen. Just bear with me. Cool. I'll quickly take you through the toolkit, just top level. So this sits within the adaptive culture element that's critical for adaptive systems. I'll take you through it, and then I'll share this with you, a digital copy of it. So essentially, it talks a bit about what psychological safety is, the belief that the work environment is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. We know that. Challenges I find, though, are how do we measure it, how do we work with it, how do we improve it? So in this toolkit, I talk a bit about a survey. So this is a research-based survey. There are a few key, in fact, I think I have the book here. There are a few, found it. This is one of the researchers, you've probably heard of her, Dr. Amy Edmondson, Novartis Professor of Leadership at Harvard. She wrote a book called The Fearless Organization. So her, among three others I've drawn research from, these questions essentially allow you to gauge psychological safety in a team or in an organization. So if there's an anonymous survey you send out using whatever platform you use, you wouldn't use this rating on the right with them. They would just answer the question. In the background, you can score them up with these scores and add them up, average them up. And there are the steps there that you can take. Again, I'll send this out to you. And then you can get a sense of, okay, well, where do we sit on the levels of safety? So you're either safe or you're unsafe, but there are various levels within that. So what I find most of the time is organizations sit in this level 3 level of safety, where they have kind of an illusion of it because they talk about it a lot, but they don't really have it. So you can gauge, okay, where is the team at? Where's my team at? Where is this department at? Whatever it might be. So you plot it on this scale, and then there's some key things in here in terms of how to create safety. I've got a toolkit in terms of key elements to bring in, many of which you'd be able to, I'll just stop sharing, which you'll be able to search and find and try to apply. But that'll give you a framework. It'll give you the survey to use. It'll give you a starting point to go off and begin to create safety, to understand how safe is it and where do I start? How do I begin to create this? Okay, we're coming to the end of the evening, so I'm just going to pause here and maybe we'll just open it up. Ken, do you want to, actually, I've got a little survey. Shall I do that? I've got a little survey that enables me to get the digital copies out to you. I'll just paste that in the chat. In this digital survey that I've got, I use it for sessions like these. In there, just FYI, there's a question in there. Don't feel obliged to answer it. It's about, I run a course that goes deeper into this and provides more of the toolkits. It just gauges whether you might be interested in that. Don't worry about it if you're not interested, but that's part of it. It's just part of the survey. I'll paste that in the chat and give you a minute or two just to complete that. It has a question in there around whether you'd like digital copies. If you do, feel free to tick that, put your email on there. I also I also do a newsletter. So if you'd like to be added to that, feel free to tick that as well. And then in the next, say, 24 to 48 hours, I'll get, if you do like them, I'll get you digital copies of these models, of the key elements in them. I'll get you some of the references as well, like some of the starter books. if you want to go into some of these, like you might choose one of these and say, well, I'm interested in this area to make an anti-fragile delivery system. So I'll get this book and I'll read it and try some things. I'll also send you a copy of the psychological safety toolkit, so you can go and try that out. And there'll also be additional references in there where you can go deeper if you'd like. So I'll just give you a minute to finish up that survey. If you have any questions, feel free to ask while you're doing that.
So what do you think about like routines with helping a team become more anti-fragile?
Yeah, it's a good question. So go ahead.
Yeah. Would that be considered something to help with that, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think in the what routines are you thinking of? So what might be an example?
Well, so we're in the beginnings of our agile transformation at Anheuser-Busch. So it's like getting those processes in place and putting the structure in place. I'm just like, you know, I find that it does help. So I just kind of feel like routines do help in some scenarios, you know, like routine of retrospectives and stuff like that. And I'm also very interested in your psychological safety toolkit, because I think we could use that at our company for sure.
Cool, thanks, Nissa. Yeah, I think you make an absolutely brilliant point, and so you'll notice I've got adaptive process down there on the lower left.
Right.
That's there because I believe that's a starting point. To your point, I think you're actually hitting on something that's really important. If we start with process and routines, it's really powerful. It creates a framework. It creates habits for people. So when I mention empiricism, you know, Scrum is all about empiricism. It's all about an empirical process, inspection, adaptation, and transparency. And you can do that with Kanban. You can do that with Scrum. You can do that with XP. You can do that with a number of other different sort of methodologies, or create your own. But I think you're bang on. I think and that's what I would normally do. So I'd normally, let's get a basic process going. Let's get basic empiricism, retrospectives, reviews. Let's just start with the basics. Let's get you going. And then we just take baby steps, right? So I wouldn't throw this whole thing in. In fact, mostly I wouldn't show teams this. I would just begin slowly, and generally, you know, agile transformations, as you know, probably good 12 to 24 months to really make good progress. I just slowly begin to bring these things in, slowly and slowly. Once a team's got some good process, some good bones in place, then I might, you know, during that process do a psychological safety survey, gauge where they're at, begin to bring in key psychological safety elements, because psychological safety to me is absolutely foundational. Have you heard of the Project Aristotle, Nissa?
No.
So Project Aristotle, it was a project done by that Google did, and you can Google it. You can Google this project done by Google.
Okay.
There's a really cool write-up in the New York Times on it. And in it, it was done years back, but it was a 2-year-long project. It was a research project, and they set out to answer the question, what makes for high-performing teams in Google? So they did it's like 180 different teams and all sorts of like data models, and like, you know, they're a data company, so they crunched heaps of data over 2 years, and they couldn't find anything. Like, they could not for the life of them find the correlations for high-performing teams. They looked at all sorts of factors, like the list is huge, like, you know, like similar interests and all these things. They were banging their head against the wall. Eventually, they stumbled across psychological safety, and they modified some of their research to say, let's test for that. They tested for that. That was the single common factor across all high-performing teams. Without psychological safety, it wasn't possible. So I think you're right on. I think psychological safety as a foundation with process is a good springboard to grow everything else. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and well, we're trying to implement team happiness survey, but I'd really like to see how that compares to the psychological safety, because I was just talking to a team member yesterday where he's like, you know, he felt like he wasn't being supportive, and I want him to feel like he's being supported by his management. So I may have to have a talk with them, but I think the psychological safety thing could also be helpful.
Yeah, it's a good point. And in the psychological safety survey, which again is research-based and practice tested, there's a question in there that gauges that. So that's, I think what you've got is already kind of hitting on to a couple things. So yeah, really good. So thank you for bringing that in. Anyone else have any questions or anything kind of they're curious about or they'd like to bring up in the last few minutes? Maru, go for it.
Yeah, I guess then the obvious question of what do you do with teams when you found out about their psychological safety profile at that moment in that context of the study? What do you guys do?
Good. Yeah, great question. So there are 3 key elements, and it's in the toolkit, but I'll share it on my screen now. If it shares to the right screen, I'll just put this on there. I won't share the whole. There we go. It should be good enough. There are essentially 3 key elements. 1, setting the stage. 2, inviting participation. 3, responding productively. And within that, there are key elements and key things to do to enable safety, to create safety. I'll give you an example of one because we don't have time to go through them all right now. And by the way, if you have questions about these, feel free to just reach out to me. Like if you just want to chat and have a yarn about any of it, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to make time to chat at no charge, just to kind of talk through it and be a sounding board for you. But one of the key elements is creating structures and processes for safety. So you'll see that it's there under inviting participation, the 3rd element, setting up structures and processes, and it kind of alludes to what Nissa was talking about. One of the key elements I bring in to, you'll see it there, designed alliance for creating structures for safety is a designed alliance. And essentially, you might also know it as a social contract. Social contract, you can Google it. You can look up different ways people create it. Really powerful way to create a shared foundation for safety. So that's one of the things I do. I also teach teams something called impact feedback. You can find that in, some of you already know about it, but if you don't, you can grab this book. It's called Evolve Agility by Michael Hammond. Evolve Agility is one of my and Ken's mentors, and in the book he talks about impact feedback and how to create that, how to do it. So I teach teams impact feedback, and it's a really powerful conversational technique that, in a non-violent way, to be very honest. Because one of the hard parts about team dynamics is it's hard to be honest and not offend. And I teach teams using impact feedback. The long term is impact, I think it's impact behavior feedback. But that's a skill, a technique to use to help them with that. But those are the 3 elements there on your screen that you see. I'll send them out to you. Some of these, there's a lot behind it, but you can Google it and do, and if you want any references for some of these or any examples, feel free to email me or message me on LinkedIn. Happy to, or if you want to have a Zoom call, happy to do that too. But that's basically what I would do. Maru, did you have another question about it?
Awesome.
Wanted to say thank you.
Cool. My pleasure. Perfect. No worries.
Awesome.
Ken,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Glenn, for this. This has been really, really useful and impactful stuff.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and do this with us, and so much gratitude I can't even say.
Thank you for having me on. It was great to be with you all and to host you.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll follow up with I'll send out an email with